just had a host launch last month with a $150 a month membership, and they made $250,000 in their first month.
Wow. In the first month?
Incredible. The first month.
Crazy.
We were like, what is this line going up? We're like, awesome.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of The Influence Factor by the Influencer Marketing Factory. Today with me, Stecyk, SVP of Marketing, Mighty Networks. Thank you so much for being with me today. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. I wanted to have you on board today because I'm really fascinated by communities, different type of audiences. Nowadays the creator economy is changing on a daily basis, right? Every single day there is something new. So when I saw Mighty Networks, I actually think that we included you in one of our reports some months ago with a quote. So I started looking at that, I was like, wow, this is interesting. This is finally a nice way, right, to get people all together, right? But before we get into that, again, the creator economy is new as a concept, right? So how did you get into that, first of all?
Yeah, great question. So I actually went to school for library science. So a little bit of a career swerve. I always just loved information and bringing it all together and sharing it with other people. And I ended up working as a corporate librarian at an ad agency. And I'm dating myself, but we were selling this new thing called content marketing to all these brands and telling them, you can create content and bring people in with this native advertising that's not really advertising. And I'd been a writer for a long time. So I was like, oh, that's a job. That's great. I want to do that. And I ended up working in content marketing at Twitter. And I worked on the small and medium business team. So, we worked with creators, entrepreneurs, and I just fell in love with the agency and the big dreams and the vision that all of these small businesses and small business owners had. And so for me, creators are just entrepreneurs. In fact, at Mighty, we ask our hosts, is what we call our customers. We ask them, how do you describe yourself? Do you describe yourself as a creator? And the vast majority call themselves entrepreneurs. So I think it's funny that we have assigned a new name to them, and it's just a new take on entrepreneurship and new types of businesses. And so for me, getting to work with that group of people again in a way that's on the forefront of what's possible for them was why I just jumped at the opportunity to work at Mighty.
Wow, amazing. I guess that you saw it in the past years, right? How, as you said correctly, it shifted, right? From being merely someone that is creating content to actually being solopreneur. They sometimes have their own LLC, right? To write off expenses, and they really see themselves as companies, right? So this is quite interesting. So thank you so much for, first of all, telling more about you, because again, it's so new as a concept, as a topic. There's some people 5 years ago were not even working in the community, right, in the community space, right? They were not existing almost, right? That's amazing. So you started like this, you got into Mighty Networks. Now, when was that? When did you start working?
About 2 years ago. So Mighty has already been established for some time. But what's really cool is we kept up with kind of the next thing creators and entrepreneurs need to build these thriving communities. So I was excited to join 2 years ago when you're totally correct. The community space has just taken off in the past 2 years. And so when I joined, it was like this rocket ship of just more people interested and talking about it and more competitors, which, hey, we want to see a lot of communities in the world. So bring it on. We're happy that people are talking about this incredible space. Amazing.
And if you had to just explain in a few words, what is Mighty Networks?
Yeah. So Mighty Networks is a software platform. It is the only place where you can own your community under your brand in one place. You can have courses and community in one place. Live stream from your own community, and ultimately, when you're ready, upgrade to your own branded apps. So there's this beautiful pathway for creators and entrepreneurs who are just starting a community to building these thriving 6-7 figure businesses where you're telling people, hey, go to the app store and download my app, my community, my courses, my lives. It's fantastic.
Wow. I know that we're going to get into that about revenues and numbers later on, because it's one of the things that people are interested. But when you say 6 and 7 digits, to me, it's always like really interesting because I also been into this space for a long time now. And before, when like, years ago, people were really making like $100 here and there. It was not sustainable. Like it was like once in a while, and people were not taking like content creators and influencers like in a serious way, right? It was like, it's a hobby, you have it on the side.
Right.
So I'm really interested to get into like that with you, because when you said these big numbers and people that are not into this industry, they don't even realize how much they are making, right?
Totally.
So we're going to get into that a bit later. But so thank you, first of all, to just say, what is Mighty Networks? But I also wanted to ask you, why nowadays, like communities are so crucial for content creators and overall just in our space? Like, in your opinion, what are some of the maybe many factors like, that are saying, okay, you need a community nowadays?
Yeah, I think there's a couple main ones I would call out. I mean, one is this idea of the content treadmill on social media, which I think is where a lot of creators get their start, right? They're posting content, they are creating a ton of content. I mean, I think now, there was a narrative around, TikTok, it's easy to get all these followers and grow your community, which I would say that's not quite a community, it's more of an audience. But TikTok recommends that you post, like 2 to 3 times a day?
Yeah.
And the people who are really excelling at it, they're taking the time. I mean, there's incredible transitions. They're becoming full-fledged cinematographers, videographers. And this is nothing new, right? YouTube got to post at least weekly. All the social media platforms. I mean, Facebook and Facebook groups, oftentimes people move to Mighty from Facebook groups, and you'd think, Facebook groups, that's a community, right? You're bringing people together. But ultimately, it's not a community you own. You don't even have their email addresses. And when people start to realize that, I have built this group of thousands or even millions of people, I don't even have their emails. We're seeing creators get locked out of their accounts, or, hey, I posted all this stuff and the algorithm isn't showing it to people in my group. So I think the importance is not just on community, but a real community that you own. That's not an audience that's just expecting you to broadcast, right? It's like a one-way relationship. I'm on a stage broadcasting, but it's actually a community where your members are interacting with each other. So that's one reason I think for creators, it's such a hot topic, because they're starting to see that the wheels are falling off. Even if you go to a new platform, the same stuff starts happening. And in general, not just for creators, but for everybody, I mean, the last 3 years have been isolating, uncertain, rapid change. And, we go through cycles as humans where that happens all the time. But I think the last 3 years have really brought it into perspective for people. And communities are the single best way to navigate rapid change, right? You look to other people to feel less isolated, to feel less alone, to help you handle things that, you're Googling late at night. Like, I don't know what the answer is for this. You need other people. And so the ability to have community and have it online when we were all trapped in our homes, I think that's why it's such a hot topic today, because it's still so relevant and people got what they were looking for out of those online communities. And there's no stopping it now, even as we are emerging out in some cases from our homes.
That's fantastic to hear. And I would like to do a step back when you say about the difference between community and audience, right? So
yeah.
Have you been to, did you go to the VidCon this year?
I did not, but Matt Koval, who's our SVP of creators, did.
Fantastic. So I was there, right? And I think that you also saw the video about this TikToker that was waiting for a meet and greet and no one showed up.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Oh, yes, I did see that.
Okay. So I think that is a good example, let's say, of having an audience and having a community, right? Like, as you said correctly, it's easy to grow on TikTok. Doesn't mean that these people will be there for you, right? Do you have an audience that just is there for entertainment, or do you really have a community that's going to be there helping you? Can you communicate with others? Can you get feedbacks? Are going to be there really to buy your merchandising? Are going to be there to give you sort of like monthly support, right? To make your to the next level. So can we go a bit more there? Like, how do you see these difference, right? Because again, you also, as you said, before, there is audiences, there are audiences on social media, but then you have the communities that you own. Can we go more a bit in depth there? Can you say anything else that can really differentiate having just an audience and the community? What are the big differences there?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, oftentimes it's helpful to have an example. So one host I like to think of who kind of exemplifies this, because I also want to say you can have both and it can be great. You don't have to choose one or the other necessarily, but I think there's an opportunity in community. There's a YouTuber named Drew Binsky. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's an amazing travel guide. He's been to every single country in the world. He's done all these great videos, and he has an incredible YouTube channel. And what he noticed is his audience actually, were trying to connect with each other. And there were things they wanted to talk about with each other, like travel plans, like, oh, Drew's there, I've been there too, and share recommendations, maybe even plan trips together. And that was his light bulb moment of, oh, like, it's not just that they want to see me having adventures. It's also that I've managed to bring people together who have a lot in common, but on YouTube, they don't really have a way of connecting with each other and building on that. And that's almost more valuable or equally as valuable as my great content. So he launched his own app with us, right? So now he's still creating awesome content. He still has an audience, but he has this deeper community of people who, he doesn't have to post new content in the app every day, because they're showing up to talk to each other, to plan with each other, to connect with each other. So I think a lot of it comes down to sustainability, and audiences showing up for you, right? There's a famous YouTuber who I saw him talk a few years ago. He posted a video straight for over 800 days, right, to stay relevant on the platform. That is exhausting just talking about.
Wow.
So an audience is expecting you, right? They are there for you. They are there to see you on stage. And that can be exhilarating. That can be fun. That can be great. But if you want to make a long-term career out of this, you need to think of sustainability, and a community is much more sustainable. You're bringing people together. You're facilitating things. You're not necessarily the star, which I think can be a really freeing concept for creators. And I'll actually plug Matt Koval, who I work with, has an amazing side project of his own called Creator Dynamics, which is a YouTube channel about creator careers and sustainability. And he found that, the average length of a creator career is 5 to 7 years. And that's if you hit it big. And we all got to work in, for most cases, more than 5 to 7 years. So it's like thinking beyond that, I think, is when you start to think about, how do I transition this audience into a community, at least part of them?
Absolutely. I mean, a couple of things here. One, it's funny when you say about people that want to meet. There is actually a really interesting point, because I think that many people don't realize that, right? That it's not just about the host of the show, right? It's not just about the star. But it's funny because I was listening to this other podcast the other day, and they were discussing about that. They were wanted to throw like a random event, and they realized that they were not really them like attending for, let's say, like the organizer, but they wanted just to meet, like the community wanted to meet in person, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So how does it work usually like that? Do you see more, like now that we're back in person, do you also see community moving when possible, like to event in person? What are some of the activation that you see happening lately in the community? Is it live streaming? Is it in person? It is like merchandising, capsule collection just for certain people? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Live streaming for sure. I mean, the fact that you can do it in your own community. And so it's not like, oh, I'm on Facebook Live and then also come hang out on my Discord to keep the conversation going. It's just all in one place. And I think, I would never say there's been a silver lining to the last few years, because I'm not got rose-colored glasses about it. But I will say, I think people got really comfortable with digital meetings, and there's something about live too, like a live stream that can feel really personal and spontaneous and feel like you are all in the same space with the chat and the emojis and the GIFs and all going. So that's definitely picked up since we launched it last November. I will say that people are doing online events or in-person events where comfortable. So our event feature allows you to do in-person or online. But when we started to see people opening up in certain countries after the pandemic kind of dipped a little bit, we asked our hosts, we're like, hey, are you guys all planning to like go back in person? And most of them said they were going to continue doing kind of a hybrid, and that they loved just the freedom of online events because their communities had really grown to include people from all over the world in many cases. So it's not necessarily as easy to get everybody in the same place, but they built this beautiful home on the internet where they could all feel like they were in the same place virtually, which is awesome.
Wow, amazing. I mean, like to go from you have to be there all the single time producing content, you have a lot of stress on you, you can burn out and everything, and then you have a community that actually start like being there active just because they like to be like a community, right? So you can, as you said, like you can really maybe remove yourself a little bit. That I think is much needed, especially nowadays where you really are, you have to post with frequency, as you said, many platforms. And also like, I think that the competition nowadays between the people that are on platforms plus what people are expecting from you. Like we're looking at like, Mr. Beast video that, he puts 100 million in, right? Like
it's crazy. Yeah.
With that, so I guess that you need. Are you seeing like any trends like in again apart from like maybe events and so on, but like any trends in the communities to try to get the people really engaged? Are you seeing anything specific to be like? I know there is competition. This is my way to have a better retention, right? Getting the people in the door every week, every month.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a different philosophy on this too, which I think will help kind of set up what I'm about to say, which is that you don't have to have a huge social media following or email list or following before you start a community, especially when you're starting with what we call a big purpose. So when we looked at hundreds of thousands of communities across Mighty Networks, this was the number one thing that you had to have in place to be successful, which was a big purpose, which is the motivation for why are you starting this community, right? It can't just be, oh, I want to have a place to hang out. It's like, start a Discord server, cool, like a casual hangout. But really the communities that we're seeing longevity and engagement and revenue were around, hey, I'm bringing people together for something really specific. I'm focused on some transition, right? When people need that support because they're going through something uncertain. So that could be, hey, I'm trying to retire early and I don't know where to start. I'm not a financial planner. I need help. I need guidance from other people on this journey. It could be, I'm on a health and wellness journey. It could be mental health, could be physical fitness. It could be, I'm a new parent, like help. I'm reading all the books. They're not that helpful. My kid is crazy. Those kind of moments in life when you lose your footing a little bit, but other people have been on this journey. Those typically make for great communities and great big purposes. So I just want to call out that it's not necessarily like you have to build this following and then have a community. You can have a great big purpose and start there. And what that means is you're using your big purpose to market yourself, to describe your community. People show up with a really good idea of what to expect and how to contribute. So from the get-go, you're better set up for engagement versus like, hey, come hang out. It's like, well, why would I hang out there versus Facebook or Twitter or TikTok? Like, I don't know what this is. So that's number one. And the other thing we found for engagement, which is so simple, it's so simple. When we realized this was like the number one thing, bringing people back into communities, we kind of did like the facepalm. It's asking a fantastic question, just asking a great question. So, we encourage our hosts to schedule up questions every week. Like we give them actually, we had fun with this. We made a library of 1,000 questions you can ask in your community. Yeah, it was an effort, but like pretty fun. So maybe in the show notes we can share a link to it because it's free and use it in whatever community you want. I don't care, Discord, wherever you want to use it. But we gave them 1,000 questions, and it was just challenging them. Hey, schedule one up once a week, twice a week for the next year, for the next 6 months, and see what happens. Because you post the question, you notify your community, hey, there's a question. You're making it interesting, fast, easy to answer. We have some like product features around that make it really fun and easy. People answer, they comment on the answers. It piles on in this way that doesn't happen when you post a link to an outside article and are like, what do you think? It's just much more specific and engaging and opens people up. So if you want to be a great community builder, get really comfortable and excited about asking awesome questions. As an interviewer, probably be a great community builder.
Amazing. First of all, I'm gonna check it out also because I'm really curious to see like 1,000. Like I'm pretty sure that you work a lot on that, right? To come up with like, that's a funny question. Like, okay, well, what now? So 1,000. Kudos for that. First of all, and then it's really interesting that you are saying that again you can. I think we're in an era now where we really moved from unilateral communication, like TV. You were like the star. You were talking in front of others. That was it. Then we went to bilateral communication on social media. You put something out there, people can comment, but that was about it. Maybe you can reply, but that's it. But now you're saying that people want to really engage, like they want to be active, right? They want to participate, right? Even more. So that's what is interesting. And the second point that you said correctly, let's say once for all, big numbers don't that is not the only thing, right? Still, sometimes friends and people, they still ask you like about vanity metrics. So it's interesting to also hear that you can start a community with a smaller niche audience, and actually it's going to bring you a better engagement because it's a specific topic. So talking about numbers, so we said you don't need a big following. You can start even with a smaller niche of people that are really interested in you, in what you say, in your maybe not just as you as a professional, but even as a person, right? So let's talk about number because it's one of those things all the time. There is a myth, there is a crazy ideas around numbers. And I know there is also always a bit difficult because there is not a formula, there is not a recipe. It's really difficult. But I guess that you crunch numbers, right, in the past years, and you have an idea. So can you share with us today listening, some numbers just for people to understand what is possible having a community?
Yeah, I love numbers. And we have an amazing business intelligence team that we send on a lot of goose chases through our hundreds of thousands of communities because also, we teach how to build awesome communities. And whenever possible, we want to have data to back up what we're teaching, right? It makes it so much more impactful. As I said, Mighty has been doing this for a while, which helps us stand out from others who are teaching community because we do have the data to back it up, which is awesome. We actually built an entire website around the numbers. You can check it out at creatorscalculator.com. And this is really about comparing paid memberships, which is how a lot of people make revenue on Mighty, to social media. So when you think about, okay, to make $1,000 a month, how many views do I have to have on TikTok? How many views do I have to have on YouTube? How many Instagram followers do I have to have? And we're not even getting into, you might make $1,000 one month and then nothing in the next 6 months, right? Versus a membership is recurring revenue. You're charging monthly, you're charging annually. And so when we looked at Mighty, we were like, okay, for people charging, what's the average price point, right? Is it like Hulu where it's like $5 a month, a cup of coffee? It's actually $40 a month.
Wow.
So at $40 a month, you need 26 members to make $1,000 a month. If you're passionate about something, if you have this niche and this big purpose, chances are you've already built up a network that has at least 10 people in it who might fit this persona of your ideal member who's trying to navigate this big purpose. And they probably know 10 other people, right? That's 20 members, potential members right there. And so we try to educate people on, it's a different game. It's a different set of numbers versus social media when you're like thousands, millions to make any sort of impact. And, we certainly have hosts with thousands of members in their Mighty networks, but you don't have to start there. And I think that's really freeing for some people. And $40 is just the beginning. So we just had a host, I can't say the name just yet, but we just had a host launch last month with $150 a month membership, and they made $250,000 in their first month.
Wow. In the first month?
Incredible. The first month. Crazy. We were like, what is this line going up? We're like, awesome. And I'll build on this idea of the following because we also have some really interesting numbers here. We talk about, hey, you only need 26 members. You don't need huge social following. We're like, let's dig into that. Let's look at our top 250 revenue generating Mighty networks. So not even all revenue generating Mighty networks, like not if you've made 1 sale, 2 sales, but this is the top 250 who are making money on Mighty. And we looked at all their social media accounts. we were like, what is the deal? Like, are these all Kardashian level millions of followers? The average following was 8,500.
Okay.
Low.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, right?
For nowadays standards, it's low, yes.
Yeah, and it's certainly not like, I have one follower, but we've actually had we have this amazing host, Sandy, who has been building with us for a while, and she's like, I deleted all my social media. Like, I don't need it anymore, right? And so there's this transition that can happen, which can be really empowering. And as I said, you can do both. You can love both. It's totally up to you. But one of the things we try to do as we're educating people around community is just remove some of the fear and like the blockers, and not having millions of followers before you start is one of those blockers we've tried to remove.
And yeah, I mean, that reminds me, like when you look at sales also, like you need either 1,000, like $1 each, right? And you get to 1,000, or as you said, like, you're going to go $40, like, per member. So it's interesting to see. And that's just to go back when we were saying at the beginning, these people are feeling as entrepreneurs, like they're thinking about how can I make money even if I'm not there working necessarily, or how can I have a stable income? How can I, maybe even diversify my revenue stream, right? Because there is also an important concept nowadays. Before it was mostly like maybe just brand deals. So there is still a big chunk of like, the money that a creator or an influencer are getting, like in their bank every single month. But it's interesting to see, I guess you are seeing that as well. They are diversifying a lot, right? It's like, how can I actually really be in a position where, we're going to be like, okay, I'm doing these thanks to brand deals, but nowadays I can also have the stable income here. I can sell the merch there. I can do live streaming that, I don't know if at my networks you are offering like badges and tips. Is this something that you do, or is something that is not in your offering?
No, we're more focused on like the direct payment for the membership, the course, kind of this idea of results and transformation. Certainly, I'm sure we have creators who also have a tip jar. We definitely have creators who have moved from Patreon. I'm not sure if they're using both of them. The trap we find with Patreon is you can make more money doing certain things and adding on, but it's for more content, right? Like exclusive content, extra content. So it's like, oh, okay, I gotta do more now. What we've found and what I'm really excited about continuing to teach creators and entrepreneurs is how to use a community as part of a value journey. So we teach this in our Community Design Accelerator, which is one of our programs, but this idea that, have a paid community, you can have an intro offer that leads into that paid community, and then you can add on with upsells, one-on-one coaching, special experiences. So that really also, once people get comfortable with the idea of charging for community, helping them realize that there is this journey you can build. We call it the value journey to $100,000 that has been used for years in other industries, and community and a paid membership just fits so perfectly inside this framework. So teaching people that is really rewarding, and they start to see, oh yeah, this is like a whole business that I can plug into. Yeah,
I can only imagine that the education side on your, like, in your daily job, like, it's a big part of it, right? The people are still learning about how to manage this, right? How to like, really, it's a new concept for everyone, right? So let me ask you this, like, what do you think is going to be the future of communities, not just for Mighty Networks, like in general, like where are we going? Is this going to be something that everyone can become someone that is going to have a community tomorrow? If that is the case, how can you like really beat the competition? And overall, like, how do you see like, because we're talking like sometimes there is always the difference what is happening in the United States, what is happening in Europe, what is happening in China, what is happening in Indonesia, right? Do you see communities, first of all, how they are different across the world? Because I think that a community is a culture, right? A culture is a country is like a history and so on, right? So I can only imagine the differences. So first of all, I would like to see if you like have seen any differences between like, cultural and communities that maybe you can share with us. And also like just overall the future of communities. And if you can share with me one challenge, not just for Mighty Networks, like even just for communities nowadays, And one thing that you're really proud of that you achieved in the past 2 years, you were like, I killed that on that. I'm so proud. I say to all my friends.
Yes, definitely. So it's interesting, the global community aspect. One thing we found is that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, the same basic principles of how to be successful apply around charging. Like, don't give away a ton of work for free. People pay attention to what they pay for is something we teach around how to get engagement, asking a great question, having a great big purpose, really being clear about who your ideal member is. These are all universal. So it doesn't really matter if you're starting a community in Italy, you're starting a community in New Zealand, US. You have to have certain pieces in place to be successful. I will say that it's been really cool to see certain countries like pick up in community. You know, one that I noticed about a year ago starting to show up more as host was Germany. And I'm not a sociologist. I don't know the reasoning necessarily behind it. But some people I've talked to have suggested that perhaps it's there was a little bit of a hesitancy around like online spaces, getting together, sharing information online. I think Germany is like more of a private culture, perhaps. Hopefully no Germans write in. They're like, you got it wrong. But I think, again, with the shift in the world and being forced to congregate online, perhaps that opens some minds to the possibilities. So we've seen an uptick there. In general, our hosts we certainly have a lot in the States, and in the States, a lot in California, where we're from. But I feel really lucky that we've been able to build a global business because everybody needs community. Doesn't matter where you are, which is fantastic. In terms of the challenge, I feel like this ties into what I'm proud of too. Community is super hot right now, as you said, right? Everybody's talking about it. Certainly Web3, this idea of a DAO, which is a community, right? It's like a little bit of a different take on it, but it is ultimately a community. There's lots of people talking about it. There's lots of new companies popping up around it. And I think one of the challenges for people who become interested in it is, how do I do it? There's so much more information now of people trying to get in on this space. And frankly, some of it does not align with what we see has worked for years and years. So I think sorting through some of the noise around community, I was talking to a host the other day who was relatively new to this, and they were like, oh, well, I want to start a DAO. And I'm like, okay, why? Like, that's cool. What do you know about that? And they're like, that just seems like the type of community you have to start now. And it's like, well, no. I mean, it's like a hot topic, but you don't have to build a DAO. And so I think kind of wading through the noise it can be a little tricky. And realizing that, again, some of these principles are simple. They're straightforward, right? Ask a great question. It doesn't have to be like, oh, plug in all these tools and bots to like make things awesome. It's like, ask a great question. It's not as hard as you might think. And so what I'm really proud of is our own community. It's shocking that we have a community, but we do, called Mighty Community. We've grown it, doubled it since I started. There's almost 70,000 people in it. It's amazing. And it's where we model and teach what a successful community looks like. What kind of events you might want to do, what kind of content you could share, what kind of connections you could form. And the feedback we've gotten from it has been incredible. And so that's my first stop in the morning is what's going on in my community, who's messaging me, what are the new posts, what can I cheer, who can I welcome to the community. And it's my little burst of caffeine and coffee before I start the day, because I got into this because I love creators. I love entrepreneurs. I love the energy and enthusiasm and just big dreams. And so to see that, I think it's motivating for the creators in the community, but I hope they know, I think they do, that it's also really motivating for the people at Mighty Networks who work there, because we're like, oh yeah, that's why we're doing this. This is why we work so hard. So that's definitely what I'm most proud
of course, you want to have a community builder that is really good with community, itself, right? Like in Italy, we have this saying that we say, never trust a skinny chef. that like nowadays with with all the how do you say politically correct maybe might not be the best thing to say nowadays, but the concept it is that if the food is not good for the chef itself, people are not gonna really enjoy that. So I think that it's really nice for you that you are building communities to show that you are really good in building your own community, and then it's a social proof concept like, hey, we know what we're doing here, and you can learn from, I guess that you are also learning yourself, right? And then what you're learning, you're sharing with other communities, right? And that is the power of that.
Exactly.
And I liked when you...
Exactly, yeah.
And I also liked when you said about the DAO and everything, you don't have to do everything, right? You don't be there just because maybe I'm going to have a peak and then it's going to go down, and you put all this effort in many, many things instead of focusing on one. And, you said, just ask the right questions sometimes, and that just is the little start for a conversation and to start something. So start simple, right? In a way, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we talk to our hosts about these traps that community builders often fall into, and one of them that always resonates is this idea of a complexity trap, right? Even when you think about this, shows up a lot when people think about charging for a membership. They're like, okay, I'm going to have 3 tiers, bronze, silver, gold, and I'm going to offer all these different things. And I'm going to, have these upsells that trigger automatically. And this is before they've even invited one person to look at their landing page, right? Yeah. It's awesome. You can get there. If you want to do that, you can get there. But, one of my favorite quotes, I cannot remember who said it, it might've been Russell Brunson. Somebody said, a confused mind says no. So if you're trying to sell something to somebody and you are confusing them, you have a pretty good chance of getting a no. So keep it simple to start. Keep it simple for yourself. This is why we share our numbers transparently, $40 a month. Start there, right? You don't have to go nuts and make it super complex. And when we start talking about the complexity trap, you can see the light bulbs going off for people. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, when you go to a restaurant and the menu, it's never ending. People actually they order less items on the menu compared to whenever you put 8 items. First of all, you know that if you put less item on the menu, okay, it means that they're really good in doing those. They don't do a thousand things. And 2, as you correctly said, you're not confusing people. You're spending all this time and okay, I'm going to get just these, Instead of it's put less than that. I'm talking about food today a lot, chef, skinny chef, and the menu and everything. But again, being Italian, that's what I can get back when it's analogies to talk about. But really interesting concept. So we cover many things. Is there anything that we left out today that you think it's crucial for people to know about?
Yeah. So this is something totally stealing from my fantastic CEO Gina Bianchini, who has amazing insights into community, and this is something she's talked about a lot. She founded a company called Ming, which was really at the forefront of communities online before she founded Mighty Networks. And when we started talking about this, it really made me so even more excited for what we're building at Mighty, because as we enter this period of uncertainty, I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily want to read the news every morning. I'm so happy that communities, what we're teaching people about, are a resilient business model. They're simpler than you think, as we've talked about, right? It's not as hard as you may think. It's recurring revenue with a membership, a subscription where you're providing value every month. It doesn't require upfront capital investment, right? There's a lot of side hustles, schemes that you hear about online. I was just reading one about this automated YouTube channels in the New York Times, and it's oh yeah, you got to pay $20,000, get that going, right? There's not upfront capital investment. There's no product to purchase for a community. No supply chain issues, right? No inflationary issues. And you also have this opportunity for viral growth, because what we see happen is your members invite new members, right? They're having a great experience. They're getting help with this transition. They're getting the results they wanted out of it. And they're telling their friends, right? They're saying oh, yeah, I'm glad you noticed that I have a better outlook right now, or like I'm happier, or I've done this amazing thing, it's actually because of this community I'm in. Like they are telling people about it, which you don't necessarily have in other sales funnels. And perhaps most importantly, you know, in a time when people may be cutting back on spending, on discretionary spending, we're not seeing that across our hosts, which means they're building essential businesses. They're building businesses that people are getting enough value out of that, you know, they may cut their 45th streaming service that they pay for every month, but they're going to keep paying for this incredible community where they have deep connections, they've made progress against one of their goals, and it's not going to be on the chopping block. And again, wanting creators to be successful, entrepreneurs to be successful, that's just so exciting to see, because I know we're all just, who knows what's going to happen in the next year or 6 months. You know, it's an uncertain time for sure.
I mean, at the end of the day, we are social animals. We want to interact with the others, and communities have been there since the beginning of time. Before, we just didn't have a place like online where to be and where to get people, but it's the most natural thing, right? Like that is just in the instincts of us, right? To be together with others, especially if you share the same interests, right? So at the end of the day, I'd say if I get it, like the message is like, start simple, start easy, like, you know, don't be afraid of too many things, don't confuse the others, just be there to be yourself, right? And share like about yourself, ask great questions, and start with the community in mind, and money will follow. Like if I got it correctly, you know, the majority of
and join Mighty Community. It's free. We want to help you and add that. But yeah, I truly believe anyone can be a great community builder. As you said, it's part of who we are. And so if you're thinking about starting a business that in any way has some aspect of helping people progress or bring people together, a community is a natural fit.
Amazing.
And so I'm hoping that we'll continue to see a rise in people starting.
I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I can see the growth there. So best of luck of that.
Yeah.
Jane, thank you so much. I learned a lot. I thought that I knew about communities, but today I learned many new things. I saw the differences and new numbers in. So thank you for sharing with me and with everyone today listening. Is there any last thing that you want to add before we wrap up?
No, but hey, I'm in Mighty Community, so I hope I see you there. And this was super, super fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Amazing. Thank you for joining me today, Jane. And for everyone listening, this was the Influence Factor by the Influence Marketing Factory. See you in the next episode.